Okay, let's dive into this. Today, we are exploring a place that's woven from an incredibly rich, complex, and ancient cultural tapestry. We're looking at Afghanistan. Now, when you hear Afghanistan today, you probably immediately think of recent geopolitical headlines, right? But what we're going to do right now is step back. We need to look at the broader, much deeper picture. We're talking about a land with human settlement dating back a staggering 50,000 years. I mean, literally imagine standing on soil that has been continuously walked on, cultivated, and fought over for 50 millennia. It's absolutely breathtaking. They call it the Heart of Asia. And geographically, that makes perfect sense. Covering over 652,000 square kilometers, it's essentially the ultimate crossroads of the continent. It's completely locked in, surrounded by 6 different countries: Pakistan, Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and China. Long before it was the modern state we know today, this territory was known in antiquity as Ariana and later on as Khorasan. It's been the center stage for some of history's most famous conquerors. We're talking everyone from Alexander the Great to Genghis Khan, and that's precisely because of its incredibly vital location. To truly wrap our heads around this fascinating country, we're going to explore it through 5 key areas. 1. The Heart of Asia. 2. A tapestry of tribes. 3. Social codes and faith. 4. Arts, cuisine, and culture. And 5. A resilient young generation.
Part 1. The Heart of Asia, Foundations of a Nation. So you've got this massive geopolitical scaffolding here. After centuries of empires rising and falling, like the Arab Muslims in the 7th century, Timur, Genghis Khan, the modern Afghan state actually took root in 1747. That is when tribal leaders gathered for a grand assembly, known as a Loya Jirga, to unite their fragmented provinces. Fast forward a bit, and the country spent the 19th and early 20th centuries caught in a massive tug of war, actually fighting 2 wars against Britain before King Amanullah Khan secured full independence in 1919. Then, the late 20th century brought immense hardship. The 1979 Soviet invasion sparked a devastating decade-long war, which is followed later by the first Taliban rule, the 2001 US-led NATO invasion, and finally, the Taliban retaking power in 2021. So as you can see, it's a modern history defined by constant seismic shifts.
But wait, let's rewind just a second, back to that founding year of 1747. The man who united those rival Afghan tribes was Ahmad Shah Durrani. He's widely considered the father of the nation. He built the Durrani Empire, which ended up becoming one of the largest empires of the 18th century, stretching all the way from eastern Iran to Kashmir and Punjab. And he chose a magnificent title for his dynasty, Dur-e-Durran, which translates beautifully to Pearl of Pearls. All right, moving to part 2. A tapestry of tribes, the people of Afghanistan. Now, what's really interesting is the sheer variety of ethnic backgrounds sharing this single nation. The Pashtuns make up the largest demographic at 42%, followed by the Tajiks at 27%. But we also see really significant populations of Hazaras and Uzbeks, along with the Aimak, Turkmen, Baloch, and quite a few others. In total, Afghanistan holds more than 20 distinct ethnic groups. Each one brings their own language, their own traditions, and their own deep-rooted tribal identity. It is, without a doubt, one of the most ethnically diverse countries in all of Asia. Because of all this incredible diversity, Afghan society is structured intricately around tribe, clan, and family, rather than a formal caste system. For the Pashtuns, again, the largest group, daily life is governed by Pashtunwali. This is an ancient, deeply embedded code of honor. It dictates really strict rules regarding hospitality, revenge, loyalty, and justice. In this society, social rank relies heavily on your tribal lineage, religious standing, and land ownership. Now, it's also important to note that historically, this complex social structure has led to systemic challenges. For example, minority groups, like the Hazaras, have historically faced discrimination and persecution by other groups. Which brings us to Section 3. Social codes and faith, the binding threads. So the crucial point here is that the ultimate binding thread of Afghan society is faith. Fully 99% of Afghans are Muslim, and that dictates everything, from law and politics right down to family structure and the daily routine. Within that 99%, about 84 to 86% follow the Sunni Hanafi school, while 13 to 15%, which are mostly Hazaras, are Shia. And to actually communicate across those dozens of tribal lines, the country relies on 2 official languages. Dari, which is essentially Afghan Persian, acts as the lingua franca. It's spoken or understood by about 77% of the population. Meanwhile, Pashto remains the absolute mother tongue for 48% of the country. Okay, Section 4. Arts, cuisine, and culture. The vivid colors. And this brilliantly illustrates the cultural richness we're talking about here. Did you know that the world-renowned poet Rumi was actually born in Balkh, Afghanistan, way back in 1207? This country's global cultural footprint is just massive. When you look at their daily life, it's filled with these incredibly vivid, dynamic traditions. Take their national dish, Kabuli pulao. It is a rich, savory, and sweet masterpiece of rice, cooked to absolute perfection with tender lamb and plump raisins. Or look at their traditional sport, Buzkashi. It's a famously wild, fierce, and demanding horseback competition that practically shakes the ground. And of course, there are those world-famous hand-woven carpets. Every single knot in those carpets carries the artistic soul of the region. Now, all this cultural and material wealth is deeply tied to the land itself. Historically, sitting right on the ancient Silk Road, Afghanistan was a vital trade hub. I mean, they're the world's largest producer of saffron, and their ancient lapis lazuli mines literally supplied the vibrant blue pigments used by Egyptian pharaohs and even European Renaissance painters. But then, look at the stark contrast today. The country sits on an estimated $1 trillion in untapped mineral wealth. We're talking lithium, copper, gold. However, decades of relentless war have entirely stalled the development of these modern resources. Finally, Section 5. A resilient young generation, the weavers of tomorrow. 17.4. That is the median age of the Afghan population right now. It's exceptionally low. It's a very, very young country. Over 63% of the people living there are under the age of 25, and the population is growing at about 2.6% per year. These are the youths carrying a 50,000-year-old heritage on their shoulders right at this very moment. But the modern realities they face are incredibly stark. You have to remember, about 73% of Afghans live in rural areas, relying mostly on farming and herding. Economically, it is one of the world's poorest nations. They're looking at a per capita income of just $448, and nearly half the population is living below the poverty line. Since the power shift in August 2021, the country is governed by the Taliban under strict Islamic law. As a result, the nation faces international isolation and a really severe humanitarian crisis, with millions entirely dependent on food aid. Furthermore, under the current governance, women are banned from secondary schools, universities, and most public spaces. That drastically alters the fabric of daily life for literally half of this young population. So we're left with a profoundly complex picture. It's a land of ancient poets and deep tribal loyalties, possessing staggering natural wealth, but currently facing extreme poverty and restrictive modern governance. Yet, the 44.5 million people of Afghanistan, despite absolutely everything, continue to hold together one of the oldest and most resilient cultures in the world. Looking at this incredibly young demographic stepping into this reality, we have to ask, how will this ancient, resilient culture be carried forward by its youngest generation? It's the big question that will ultimately define the future of the Heart of Asia. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.